everybody. My name is Carrie Craddock. I'm the Director of Programming for the festival, and welcome to this evening's world premiere screening of Out of Blue. There we go. To begin, we would like to acknowledge that tonight's event is taking place on the treaty territory of the Mississaugas of New Credit and the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Huron-Wendat. We are grateful to have the opportunity to work in this community. This film is eligible for the Toronto Platform Prize, presented by Air France, as well as our Grolsch People's Choice Award. You can vote for all of your favorite films at tiff.net/vote. A huge thank you to the creative artist agency CAA and Independent for providing us with this film. They're great partners of the festival, and also to the British Council for their generous support. Thank you. Out of Blue is director Carol Morley's fourth feature film, but her first to premiere at TIFF. Set in New Orleans, it's also her first film shot outside of the UK. Many of her characters experience personal struggles in her films, and that's also the case here. Carol's lead character, played by the formidable Patricia Clarkson, struggles to understand a crime and herself in what I think is a haunting, intelligent, and very emotional film. We're fortunate to have both Carol and Patricia here today for an introduction and an extended Q&A after the screening. But without further ado now, please join me in welcoming to the stage the director of Out of Blue, Carol Morley.
Hello. Thank you for TIFF, our world premiere. They say that a film isn't finished until it meets its audience. So you are our very first audience. So, thank you. So I'm going to introduce you, first of all, to our producers, of which a film would not exist without them. So I'd like to introduce Luke Roque, Cairo Cannon, Maggie Monty, and they're behind the camera. And now some people in front of the camera. Devon Tyler. Bree Collins, Aaron Tveit, the all singing, all dancing, very dramatic, and finally, but lovingly, because I love her to death, Patricia Clarkson. So thank you very much. If you like the film, please do social media. If you don't like it, don't worry about it. See you later.
I'd like to welcome back to the stage Carol Morley and Patricia Clarkson.
Do you want to go here or there? Where do you want to go? You go there.
All right, well, I want to start simply and just kind of ask about the conception of the film. It's such an unusual mix of things, and that's kind of the first thing that struck us. And so I wanted to know which one of them was almost the first thing in the pot.
Oh, I don't know if there was a first thing. I think I was really interested in the cosmology element of it, and in the investigative gaze, the female investigative gaze. And I think those two things together, the idea, does this sound funny? Just to me. Does it sound funny? Anyway, and I think that for me, this idea of drawing on a female investigation where the detective is being a whole life looking at things on the ground, looking at other people, and missing herself and the wider meaning of something. Sort of ultimately, I just found really fascinating. And I think the way I live my life, as I'm sure you all do, is that there are so many things that happen to you during one day or 1 week, whereby there is humour, there's darkness. And I wanted to tell as well a story about death that had, not like a laugh a minute, but isn't sort of so dour, and that's as fascinating as it is. I think that, so there were so many aspects that I wanted to look at, really. It does sound funny, this microphone.
There's a great tradition that your performance comes out of this hard-boiled nature. It's in the script. But I wanted to know what you felt like you both brought in collaboration, working together, to make the character as rich as it is.
Well, I first of all, of course, I was drawn to it on the page. You know, Mike was this rather unusual creation, this hardcore, this woman, you know, with feet on the ground. God, it's very, there's a lot of bright lights. My dress is very sheer.
And the mics sound weird too.
Is this still PG? Suddenly I'm in Moulin Rouge, Aaron. Anyway, no, but I was drawn to the dichotomy, to this woman who is so insular and so dark, and as you realize throughout the film, traumatized and suffered great loss as a child, but it you know, that has her feet so on the ground. She's never looked up in her life. I don't think Mike has ever thought about the stars or the universe. And then she is suddenly drawn to the world and to something larger than herself. I don't think she's ever thought outside of herself. Her whole world is her work. She says, "My life is homicide." And I just was drawn to playing a character that is really organically and is catastrophically changed by, and better for it in the end. She has this amazing healing and reckoning, and it all has to do with her coming to the universe, to something larger than herself. Could I sound more pretentious? I don't know.
That's the film, baby. Not pretentious.
I guess, you know, I would want to know, in very simple terms, how you work together, how you collaborate.
WhatsApp,
yeah.
Really, WhatsApp a lot. I met Patricia, and then we would have a lot of conversations on you know,
yes,
from London to New York.
But we didn't intellectualize. We kept it visceral, organic. Mike is a rather physical departure, like she would not be wearing this. Maybe these heels at the stripper club, but no, you know, we just discussed really facts, and we kept it character, and we didn't get into the metaphysical and how, and I had to do the emotional homework for this character, and I knew that before I arrived, and but Carol is a very, a little like Mike. She's very grounded, and yet I think Carol has stars in her eyes. So it was this kind of, she has the dichotomy that I needed for this character within her.
So it's just studying her is what you're saying?
And I think, I think, as we all know, Patricia's a phenomenal actress. And, yeah. And as filmmakers, we dream of telling stories. As directors, we dream of working with people of Patricia's caliber. And when I wrote Mike, I knew that she was a difficult character in the sense of, I think often when you write a female character, people will think they're not sympathetic enough on the page, that they need to, that somehow an audience needs to be drawn in more if it's a female lead, which really drives me crazy, because the history of cinema, you've had loads of guys just smoking a cigar and they get an Oscar, or they get, you know, they're sort of so deep and meaningful. So for me, I wanted to actually write, you know, very specifically a female character that was not pampering to a kind of audience the people claim need a certain something for a female character, because I actually think audiences don't, and so it's very frustrating sometimes so for me, I wanted to write not a strong woman but a complex woman, and that for me was Mike. And then you dream about who could do it and who could bring that very difficult task to reality, and there we go. Because I think what Patricia has is a real capability of not over sort of emphasizing a character. You feel her. I think you get more and more absorbed in Mike, and I think that's one of your real skills. Just
of many,
but it's true. All true.
And my big earrings.
Can we talk a little bit about the location? I was curious, the choice to set it here, where you shot, the specifics of how you shot.
I mean, it was a set in America. I didn't know where, and I was very much like, I'm not going to locate it where there's tax credits, because I'm not going to make it easier for my producers. And then I decided on Atlanta for some reason, because I know nothing about America. And me and Cairo, one of the producers, went to Atlanta, and I hung out in homicide units and all of that. And cast Patricia, and she phones, we can't do it in Atlanta.
I was shooting a part of Sharp Objects in Atlanta, and I got there, and it was the traffic, and there were many things shooting there. And I called her and I said, listen, if we shoot in Atlanta, the only person left to do my hair is a dog groomer. I did tell you that. And I said, everybody's here. The crews are stripped. There's nobody here. The traffic is brutal. I'm a New Orleanian cop who was at first going to have been transferred to Atlanta. So I said, just keep me New Orleanian. That's my hometown. That's where I was born and raised. And I love my hometown. And the tax credits had just been reinstated. And
very grateful.
I was like,
you wanted to make it easy on the producers.
And so it was just this ideal
and what was really weird was when I began to write it, I had this idea that Mike was the city. And so obviously you are New Orleans. And I think Mike being, and Patricia being so connected to the city was really important.
Do you feel like there were details you brought from knowing the place?
Well, yes. I mean, I'm a native and I know the city well. Yeah. But what I think the beauty of this film is that it's just the city exists. It's not, there's not a lot of gumbo and étouffée talk. And many of the two beautiful girls who came out at the top tonight, the two beautiful actresses, they're New Orleanian. So there was true New Orleanian flavor and so we didn't have to emphasize or recreate or kind of tip our hat to anything. It just lived. And, the city is beautiful. And those scenes of me driving across the Mississippi River, which I've done all my life since I was born, to see them on film is very moving to me. I love my hometown, and I'm glad that it's represented this way.
I mean, it is really beautiful. I guess in terms of the matter of correction of anything, like was there anything in the script where you're like, I want to...
No, she kept it very simple.
I do my research. I actually had been to New Orleans before when I was about 19, but I was so drunk for 4 days that I arrived on a Greyhound, left on a Greyhound, and don't remember it.
Movie.
Yeah. But I did then do additional research, and like when being from England and you see a film and it has a lot of red telephone boxes in London Bridge, and you're like, so I really didn't want to do that with New Orleans and I feel in a way that when you live in a city, you're not constantly looking at the tourist sites, So I really wanted to sort of imbue the film with a feel of it without overpowering, without it being about the location.
Let it just live and exist, and it's there.
Yeah.
And the city, all of its, its beauty, its, the beauty, the warts and all is in the city, and you see it all.
And of course, the beads are big in New Orleans because of Mardi Gras, so we have a bead.
Yeah.
That is
Bead.
that is Mardi Gras.
One single bead.
Yeah, just the one, not
Just
many.
to not overdo
just the
it.
one.
Yeah. And by the same token, you talk about the research. I was curious about the level of astronomy and cosmology research that went into it,
Well,
on both of your ends.
I mean, I genuinely didn't know that we were all stardust. And when I found that, I mean, some people know, and it is in that Joni Mitchell song, but I'd never really listened to the lyrics properly. But, we are all stardust, we're all made of carbon, which I didn't realize was true. I just thought it was so when I found that out, it blew my mind, and I found it incredibly comforting. And this idea that we are all connected, and in these times that are so difficult and disparate and people are being divided up, the idea that we are all one and the same, that we all come from stardust, I just found incredible. And I think like collections of people and audiences really excite me because that connection we have together. So I think the cosmology blew my mind, and what a black hole is, and the double slit experiment. I mean, we are all a simulacrum. That's the other thing you get. So that did really excite me. And then, but I didn't want to talk much to Patricia about that because I didn't want her to know that world in any great detail, only what she discovered.
Yeah, it's not. So I let it wash over me in ways, but it did. It took hold of me in the way that it would with Mike, and so I kept it at a certain distance. But then eventually, it does enter me and become part of me, and in some ways save me. So,
by the same token, was the shooting schedule somewhat sequential to kind of make the transformation?
I wish. I mean, that's a filmmaker's dream to do it chronologically, but with budgets and and the amount of time you've got. But actually, shooting out sequences is quite fun, because in some ways I quite like it because you're really aware of the construction, that it is it's not a documentary. It's not just as it happens. It was very challenging for you, but you're amazing.
Well, on that note, I want to open it up to the audience. Does anybody have any questions? Right here?
We can't see you. But... Just say that last bit.
So
sound design
the sound design.
Work together. I really love sound. Our editor was Alex Mackey, and I think that we were constantly aware of sound and that informing the sound and withdrawing sound. We work with brilliant sound designers, and now I've suddenly forgotten their names. Tim Hands and Kyra.
They're not here. They won't.
Yeah. My mind has gone. But so I think everybody was very supportive of not putting things in the film that were what you would expect. So it's really working with trying to bring some other element to it. That's not a very good answer, but you said to answer it very quickly. So I'm trying to be quick. But I think that, for me, sound is and music is 50% of the film. So Clint Mansell did the music, and that was great to work with him. And because I think, obviously film is one big, massive collaboration, and you're just trying to give people free rein to bring all that they can to it, the editor, the sound design, but at the same time, as a director, sort of have, basically make everyone do what you really want. Do you know what I mean? It's sort of like, so you've got all these people, but you have a plan, And I think the sound design is very important to it. Yeah. And the editing.
Right here.
I'm just curious as a filmmaker, how do you know when that's too much and the audience gets it and knows it, and you feel kind of compelled to recapitulate?
So,
I mean, yeah.
just for the rest of the audience, the summary of the question is that I think, how do you find the line as a filmmaker of how to emphasize just enough or not too much the recapitulation of these images?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really, really good question. And I think it's really quite difficult. And I think because you get very familiar with what you're seeing and what you're doing. So I think it's, showing people and sort of seeing where you're at. But there is a reason that the images are repeated as well beyond that, which is that Mike is suffering from trauma where she's re-seeing them. So when you have that condition, you can't rid them from your mind. So observation change as a result is to see an image, read it, in this film particularly, but to see an image and read it one way, then see it again and read it another. So it's sort of the opportunity to revisit particular images. And so that was where that came from, really, to re-look at them and to give the audience time to do that. And Mike herself,
yes, sometimes there were images in my mind present and images from the past, and they were at times simultaneous.
She doesn't know which is which and what is what.
I've blocked so much as a child, which often you do with this kind of trauma, that I'm not sure anymore what I'm really seeing, if I'm seeing it, if it's present or past. And that's the kind of horror
if it exists or it doesn't. I like the word recapitulation.
I'm looking up on the balcony to see if there's anybody I'm missing. Over here? Yeah. So the question was if you could elaborate on Mike's repression of her trauma, and I mean there's more to it, but I'll let you.
Yes, that was. I'm not sure where to begin with that because it was so integral to the creation of this character. It's had where I had to begin in some ways was making sure that the trauma, because of this case, was bringing something. A very rock solid woman was shaking the ground beneath me, and it was something that is not normal to her. But she realized suddenly she was in the throes of true, real PTSD trauma, and so she. It just began in that sad. Inescapable place, and of course it overcame her and it took over her life ultimately, and it incapacitated her. But I had to understand the true value and weight of what had happened to her as a child, which was brutal, which was the preparation I had to do before I began this part, and live with that. And that's one of the powers and wonders of this character, is that she has, I play so many characters that are filled with externals. Look at me. But this is a completely unadorned, insular woman, and yet what is raging inside of her is so traumatic even to play and to keep inside of you. And so it was, but I had to begin with that in order to proceed. And so that's how I did it.
Okay, well, I think we have time for one more. I'm going to go down here. So the question was about the tattoo on your right shoulder.
All I remember is Patricia let me choose it, and it was.
There was a moment when you saw a lot of it.
Yeah.
But that's gone.
Yeah.
Like a lot of it.
Patricia let me choose her tattoos, but I think we chose it. I think I chose it because it was a divided. It felt almost like a divided universe. To be honest, I couldn't tell what it was, but it just felt divided. It felt like two worlds. Probably, yeah.
I had several.
Yeah.
We never saw on my back.
Yeah.
Was that all?
We have to have another question.
Yeah, we could take one more.
That's not a good one to end on. Like, I don't know.
Okay, I'll go there. That's where the audience wants to go.
I'm sorry.
So the question was, how do you embody all of the layers of this character, even somebody that doesn't quite understand themselves?
Like I said, I think it's homework. I always think as an actor, you always want to have the character in you, not on you. And especially a character like Mike. And so I think it's just homework. It's just time alone, doing the difficult connections to this character. I'm fortunate I've never suffered this level of trauma, but I've certainly, of course, had pain and loss in my life. And all of those things had to come to the forefront, and yet they had to be present, and yet submerged. So it was this odd, every day on the set, this odd pull, this forward and backward motion I always felt in those scenes. But that was exactly the place I needed to be. It was uncomfortable often, many days on the set, but that was just where I had to be. And I think as an actor, I've done a lot of work at this point in my life. I'm 100. And, I guess I'm used to being in difficult spaces, and I want to be. I want to be challenged. I want great directors to demand things of me that are not easy. And so I'm very thankful to have worked with this great female director. And you know what I'm going to say at the end is I want to thank Toronto, the film festival, because you have always honored, celebrated, exalted female directors. And here you are again with this great female director. But you've always done that, and you're a festival that has always celebrated women, female directors, and I thank you for that.
Well, we want to thank both of you so much for coming and sharing the film with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.